Megan, how are you?
Now they're chipping away at the normalization of pedophilia, and the left is embracing this type of behavior.
We welcome Dinesh D'Souza.
No, I ticked him off. In a certain sense, it's a giant up yours to Obama, and that's why the left is freaking out over it.
Jack Kennedy and LBJ, Clinton, and the double standard from the left.
Yeah, I love how the left does nothing but push the most bizarre practices down our throats and up our tailpipes.
It takes a real man to tackle the hot issues that really matter.
Michael Hart is the man of this house.
Welcome to the Michael Hart Show.
Good morning, and you're listening to the Michael Hart Show right here on the Hart of America Talk Radio Network. Man, have we got a lot planned today as the president's still lying in state. Many people from across the country, across the globe, parading by the casket throughout the course of yesterday, and that will continue on into tomorrow. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later on in today's broadcast. Got a lot of other things that we're going to be covering for you today as well. So y'all just kind of hang tight with us here, having a little bit of technical issues on our end, and so we are doing our best to resolve those particular issues. So y'all just kind of hang tight with us. We're trying to figure all this out in real time right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. So give us a call when the time is right, 929-477-3761. That's 929-477-3761. All right, we've got much of the news of the day with the president lying in state, obviously, and we have also got some interesting this day in history that we're going to be covering as well. And more migrant caravan stuff. Oh, yeah, an interesting report that came out, not even 1 hour ago about welfare as it relates to non-citizens in the United States. So, and then there's that. And we've got a few things we're going to be mixing up around here on the program. We're going to continue to come to you live every single day at this particular point in time, but we're getting a really hard schedule of exactly what we want to cover. And, for example, tomorrow is going to be our very first inaugural. That's redundant. Tomorrow is going to be our situational security. No, I'm sorry. Tomorrow is Unknown America. Situational security is going to be on Friday. So we're going to be doing a lot of different things here, a lot of different programs, a lot of different offerings, because there's a lot of history in the past a lot of people are just not aware of, and you really need to be up to speed with a lot of these things that are going on in our nation from a historical perspective. And one of the things that I love to pick on the most is the media, because when I penned the book Unknown America, which started out kind of as a trivia book for American history buffs, it morphed into something it was never intended to be. And we started to get into a lot of different stories about all the myths and historical mishaps that history has projected onto generations after generation. But as I got deeper into my research, I began to realize that a good bit of that was compliments of the media. With that said, I realized that I guess you could doing a podcast or even a live internet broadcast puts me in the fraternity sorority of media types. I don't feel like I'm in the media. I certainly don't behave like I'm in the media. And the reason that I bring up the media yet again is the media, even in death, is using the passage of Bush, President H.W. Bush, to denigrate Donald Trump. Now, the Bush family, earlier, it was actually late yesterday, they made the announcement, and then they doubled down on it this morning. The Bush family has made certain to assure that these services being held to honor the life and legacy of former President George H.W. Bush do not become a political platform for what they call anti-Trump swipes. Such rhetoric obviously was prominent in the services for when John McCain passed about 3 months ago. And so it goes that the Bushes have expressed concerns, even as his casket lay in the rotunda, Lion State, that the media and the anti-Trumpers, the never-Trumpers, the people that hate America, the Democrats, the liberals, you get the drift, that they are going to use the opportunity of the passage of HW to denigrate Donald Trump. According to George Bush, this will be a celebration, the son obviously, this will be a celebration of the notable public service that H.W. Bush gave. It's not going to be about anybody else. I don't think it's going to be about Trump. And while Trump and the Bush family have had their differences, the White House has sought to honor the 41st, can't even talk today, president's legacy. And, you know, I look at this stuff, and they are trying to be preemptive in terms of the way the media would respond. Does anybody realize, in the sense of international optic, what it would appear like if, in fact, the sitting president of the United States did not attend the funeral? Now, he's already viewed the casket, but if he did not attend the funeral of a sitting president. We talk oftentimes about national security. We're talking about it with the migrant caravan. Got some interesting studies that were released a day or so ago regarding what that could potentially become. But very frequently, you will have people that will mention national security. And I don't think enough people realize in this country the threat to national security that having a president stand down from a funeral actually presents. Now, that might seem like an outlandish statement on my part, but the reality of it is the optic that the country is so divided, that the president is so hated. I mean, in the worst of families, that drunk, wayward, semi-criminal uncle, he's always welcome at his aunt's funeral. People might avoid him, but he's still welcome. So now the Bushes are beginning to realize, or have realized, that the media's presence in terms of going after Trump has the potential of turning this into a political circus. History, of course, is sometimes kinder to former presidents as we gain a distance on their record and they step out of the punch and counterpunch arena of being president of the United States. But Bush had universally acknowledged qualities of graciousness, civility, and restraint, and he seemed unremarkable, even boring. I made the comment yesterday that he was not exactly an illustrious president. However, he was a well-respected and liked president. But in the current age of hyper-partisan politics, the media seems to foster a sense of longing and nostalgia for a quieter and more unified time. Well, it's obviously true that Donald Trump has a more pugilistic style than Bush, often denouncing the opposition party in the mainstream media while making himself the focus of the coverage very frequently. But the polarization that defines our politics, which intensified long before Donald Trump came on the scene, from the Clinton impeachment to the 2000 recount involving Bush the second, to the battles over Obamacare and Iraq and many of the policies of the Obama administration. Yet many in the media are constantly drawing the contrast, summed up by yesterday's Washington Post headline, "Honorable, gracious, and decent in death, Bush becomes a yardstick for President Trump." And on and on and on it goes. In other words, the media are using praise of a late president they now like. Got to bear in mind, this was Reagan's VP, was not held in the highest esteem. But they now like him. To disparage one that they had never liked as president. Of course, Donald Trump was a media darling. He was one of the faves, BFF, before he announced his candidacy. This is despite the fact that Trump praised Bush upon his passing and declared Wednesday a national day of mourning. We're talking about tomorrow, obviously. The president will also attend the funeral as Bush intended, despite the fact that H.W. didn't like him that much and had, obviously repeatedly, because he attacked Jeb Bush, and he also let it known that he voted for Hillary. But as for the stark contrast between Bush's coverage now and in the 80s and 90s, it goes deeper than healing the old wounds or a desire not to speak ill of the dead. So do you find that even remotely funny, curious, entertaining, fascinating, that H.W. was not held in high esteem during his administration? Now, he did start palling around with Clinton after Clinton got out of office. But now, all of a sudden, in his death, and how unbelievably disrespectful can you possibly be to a former president of the United States? To disparage his character, predicated on the character of another president. Let's bring this home, shall we? Ladies, gentlemen, maybe you're in a long-term relationship, and they do sometimes fall apart. They do sometimes go sour. But then you meet somebody new. You start dating, get a little more serious. You think the relationship is deepening. And then, guys, she starts to compare you to her ex. You wouldn't stand for that crap for nothing. But in the minds of the media, it's completely appropriate. We can't do in our day-to-day worlds what the press seems to do, nationally speaking. And you know what else? I don't know when it's going to be, but it's going to be soon enough where we are going to be dealing with a very similar set of circumstances because Jimmy Carter can't last that long. And our press, what's so fascinating to me is that they're talking about how they can denigrate Trump by comparing him to a president they previously didn't like. It'll happen again with Carter, but the denigrating of Trump can only be done if the media self-denigrates itself. It's quite fascinating to watch. And it's one of the reasons that this book has been so successful. Because the press, they don't give a damn. They truly don't. Joy Behar started in again yesterday. She gets into a dust-up with Meghan Markle over this. The poor man's corpse is not even completely cold, and we are having debates about the current administration. over a previous administration. And it was a previous administration that the current flock of media fowls, no pun intended, could not stand at the time. Truly unbelievable. But then again, that is America that we live in, the 4th day of December, 2018. We've got a lot of other stuff to cover today. We've also got more news on the caravan. It's getting uglier and uglier down there, despite the fact that some of them are already turning around and heading home. In addition to that, we've got some interesting observations on this particular day in history. We'll break that down on the other side. Again, we will remind you that tomorrow we will be doing Unknown America stuffs. What that basically means is we're going to be sharing, we're going to take that particular broadcast and we are going to segregate it out and allow it to be a standalone broadcast so that you can listen to it, maybe share it with family or friends, because we're going to get into a lot of the interesting things that you may or may not know about this country. Quite a few of you have picked up a copy of this book. If you want a copy of it, theunknownamerica.com. It's in all the major bookstores locally in Birmingham, second to Charles Deb's bookstore in the northern portion of the state of Alabama. Online, you know where your favorite book buying places are, but the reality of it is a lot of what you think you know about this country is just woefully not correct. We will start tomorrow, since we are in this honoring phase of the office of the president, despite the denigration of Trump's reputation, and tomorrow's edition is going to be on things that you probably did not know about many of the presidents of this country. That is going to be an ongoing project. It's going to be something that we're going to do every single week. It is also going to be accompanied by a situational security program, which will air every single Friday. We continue to have this story in the state of Alabama, where the mall shooting has taken on not only national interest, but international interest as well. There have been a lot of meetings. We still are waiting for a full-fledged release of the video cams, et cetera, because it is turning out to be it's even becoming a more horrific story than we originally knew that it was to be. But with that said, that was the inspiration to do the situational security stuff on Friday's program. We are going to be talking to a guy that has invented a thing called the safety book to keep kids safe from mass shootings in their schools. And then our resident techno guy, Tali, is going to come talk to us about ways to keep our kids safe online. So you're going to have, and then there's that, and the Michael Hart Show, and the Situational Security Program, and Unknown America, all under heartofamerica.net. Tell your families, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your church buddies to check us out, and we are going to be right back on the other side. You're listening to the Michael Hart Show right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. All right, gang, we're having a little bit of technological difficulties here, so y'all just kind of hang tight with us. We're trying to work those things out. But let's take a real quick look at this particular day in history. Some interesting stuff that has occurred all throughout the course of American history on this particular date. And so I wanted to get a little bit into this because, you know, one of the things that has been hotly debated since President Trump took office, because he won the Electoral College, Hillary, popular vote, got it, that's the way it was designed. But did you know that it was on this particular date in 1861 that the Confederate States of America, they had 109 electors. The Confederate presidential election of 1861 was the only presidential election held under the permanent Constitution of the Confederate States of America. Jefferson Davis, who had been elected president and Alexander Stephens, who had been elected vice president under what was called the Provisional Confederate States Constitution. They were elected to 6-year terms. This was on February 22nd of 1862, and it would have gone to that same date in 1868 as the first permanent president and vice president of the Confederate States of America. Now, the Provisional Confederate States met in Montgomery, Alabama, 100 miles down the road from here, on February 4th of 1861. A provisional constitution was actually adopted on February 8th. On February 9th, Jeff Davis was elected provisional president, and Alexander Stephens was elected provisional vice president. Stephens took office on February 11th, and Davis took office on February 18th in 1861. Now, what's interesting about this is that the Electoral College had 109 electors. Those electors are chosen in the November election, and they met in their respective states to cast their votes on this date in 1861. Confederate law mandated that electors meet on the first Wednesday in December. The reason I bring this up is the fact that I find it interesting with all the chatter after Donald Trump and the popular vote that so many people in this country are screaming to do away with the Electoral College because supposedly it was flawed. Now, you have to bear a couple things in mind here. Number one, Jefferson Davis is completely unopposed. He already won the election. There are certain things about the Confederate States of America, constitutionally speaking. For example, the president was given a 6-year term. There was, constitutionally speaking, that they took with them because they knew how remarkably well the tenets and the structure of the United States Constitution would work. I find it quite fascinating that the Confederate States of America adopted the Electoral College standard of electing presidents. That, in fact, they understood that popular vote, and you got to bear in mind, we've got popular vote here in the Confederate States of America. The whole, air quotes, country is founded on the concept of singularity. In other words, you didn't have all these divisive issues that they were going to deal with. They wanted sovereignty. Most people in the Deep South supported the idea of slavery. They wanted their own currency. Unlike the rebels in the 1700s, of which only 35% were actually pro-independence, that was not the case in the Confederacy. They could have, theoretically, established the Confederacy with a popular vote in place, but they chose not to. And a lot of people don't realize this in this country today, but the President of the United States is not elected in November. He's elected in December. And so I believe that it's extremely important to realize that the Confederate States of America, for all of their division and opposition to America, to federal government, to the North, understood the need to maintain the Electoral College, which means in their minds and their opinions, here we are almost 100 years removed from the original United States Constitution, and they see the value in it. But yet historians and the media and people on the left and progressive that are crying out for some kind of elimination of the Electoral College, again, are completely dismissing the history of this country, the fact that it worked, the fact that it was validated, the fact that it was tested, and the fact that even in their secession, people that would have considered themselves enemies of the North, enemies of the process, enemies of America saw the value in maintaining that particular constitutional tenet. And for whatever it's worth to you, also on this date, December 4th in 1945, by a vote of 65-7, the United States approves the United States participation in the United Nations, which had been established on the 24th of October in 1945. So we've got a lot to talk about today, a lot going on, a lot of other things that are going to be, occurring throughout the course of the day. We've got other news that we're going to cover. We're going to take a real quick break, come back on the other side, and we're going to break this caravan story down. You're listening to the Michael Hart Show right here on the Hart of America Talk Radio Network. And so this is what we call technical difficulties here in the talk radio sphere. So we're going to be dealing with a few little technical issues, so I guess we're going to abbreviate this program today. Get out of here. Reset is not on our end. It's actually on the server platform end. So we are going to do everything in our power to rectify that situation, and I'll return with you tomorrow with our Unknown America edition of the program. We essentially have lost all control of the boards. And you know the neat thing about this is it kind of goes back to the old terrestrial days and in those periods of time when I have missed and longed for being in traditional talk radio, when the boards will crash or the stop sets won't load, or for whatever the reason the tower goes down or the signal goes off. And yeah, now it seems that we have lost all control of our technical capabilities. We have no music. We have no audio or sound bites. The only thing we really have is a little bit of patience, at least for the technology side of it. All right. Let's do this real quick, and then we're going to mop this puppy up, and we're going to go ahead and get started on tomorrow's broadcast. Maybe these boneheads that are running this thing, I don't mean Polly, I'm talking about the idiots that run the cyber program portion of this show. Maybe they can get their act together. I mean, you're long for them to do this stuff tomorrow because this has gotten a little bit on the frustrating side. At least 24 Central American migrants who claim to, they're disillusioned. What? They're disillusioned and frustrated with the asylum-seeking process, y'all. They actually breached the U.S.-Mexico border Monday just before dusk by scaling a 10-foot metal fence, this according to boots on the ground. They were observed using blankets and ropes to help climb over the structure separating California from Tijuana, where thousands of migrants have been gathering in recent days. Other migrants managed to squeeze through a section of the fence on the coastal city's beach, this according to Reuters. Some migrants reportedly tried to escape capture by the U.S. Border Patrol, but most were caught. It remained unclear today how many of the migrants, if any of them at all, actually managed to escape detention. The migrants in Tijuana are part of numerous caravans that traveled through Mexico in an effort to enter the United States. Some planning to do so illegally, others legally by applying for asylum to remain in Mexico, where their cases will be heard. So, what's going on down on the border has been a complete cluster. Now, I'm not telling you anything new. And, this program, whether or not it's, and then there's that, or it happens to be the traditional Michael Hart show, because and then there's that, it's just going to come out on Mondays, kind of wrapping up the week and telling you what you can expect for the coming week. But one of the tenets of this program has always been kind of delving a little bit deeper into the news of the day and what it means. I'm still here. I'm just drinking coffee. In a study that was released earlier today, a majority of non-citizens who are using the U.S. welfare system are nearly twice as likely to be on welfare as Americans. Non-citizens, a new study shows, reinforcing President Trump's claims on the cost of immigration. The Center for Immigration Studies used 2014 census data to estimate the welfare use among various households in the country. It found 63% of non-citizens are receiving some form of a welfare program. 63% of non-citizens are receiving some form of a welfare program. The study also indicated that within 10 years, the percentage of non-citizens using welfare will increase. Just over half of all immigrant households, this is citizen and non-citizen, are receiving welfare in some capacity. In comparison, only about 35% of native households are on welfare, according to the study. Non-native households were also found to more likely use Medicaid, food, or cash welfare programs, with the only outlier being housing programs where native households are on par with immigrant households. The think tank also said their report bolsters the Trump administration's claim that non-citizens impose costs on the government. The Trump administration has also proposed a new public charge rules, making it harder for prospective immigrants to qualify for lawful permanent residence, green cards, if they use or are likely to use welfare programs. Now, do you think this information does not make its way south? I'm talking into Central America. So here you're living in a place, in a country, in a Honduras, where no argument, you have higher crime, less opportunity, you've got rampant corruption in your government. When you do earn a wage, it is vastly inferior for what a lot of other countries offer. So, walk this way, old Steven Tyler. Walk this way for a few thousand miles. And if you can scale that fence, you can get a check. If you were looking at this through the perspective of one of the caravanners, the inspiration, the motivation for wanting to go to America is stellar. It's great. Some of these guys are on cash programs, food programs, Medicaid programs, and housing programs. Yep. 63% of people in this country that are deemed non-citizens are having their housing taken care of, their health care taken. By the way, Center for Immigration Studies. Housing taken care of, health care taken care of, food taken care of, and stipend cash programs awarded to them. What is not to come here for? Again, the think tank said their report bolsters the Trump administration's claims about the huge cost that these people impose on the government. The administration has also long called for changes in laws so that new immigrants wouldn't rely on welfare. In a 447-page proposal posted online in September, the Department of Homeland Security called for immigrants to be denied permanent residency if they received or are likely to receive benefits such as food stamps, Medicaid, housing vouchers, etc. So there we have it. Well over half of those coming here are not seeking to work. They're not seeking to contribute. And something else you have to bear in mind here. What do you think the media environment is in some of these countries? And what I mean by that is do they necessarily know? Think about this for just a moment. Do these folks that are coming up from our borders, do they necessarily know that they're migrants? Do they necessarily know that they're refugees? I'm not 100%. They understand they're traveling. They understand they're going to the land of milk and honey. They understand that they are leaving what they're considered to be a despotic governance. But do they know that they are political lightning? Do they know what's being? I realize there's all the pictures of them all up and down the pathway, their own version of the Appalachian Trail. I got that, with them holding their cell phones and looking out and peering spectacularly out into the world. But do they know the extent of what they're doing, or do they just think that if I can only make it there and I'm entitled to be there? Why can't I go to the party, Mom? Everybody else is at the party. Everybody else got a balloon and a goodie bag. Why can't I get to go and get the check? During the Civil War, I don't even recall the battle. I'm thinking it might have even been Gettysburg. But there is a Southern regiment that's pretty rattered and tattered, and they are fighting in the North. And I'm pretty certain it was in Pennsylvania. And they were up against just insurmountable odds. And one particular Confederate leader, he wasn't a general. I remember reading the story, but I just don't remember all the particulars. But these Confederates are fighting. And again, I'm almost positive it's Pennsylvania. And he's trying to inspire these troops. They're tired. They're hungry. They're cold. And the battalion leader yells out to his men, "Home, boys. Home is just over that ridge." Of course, over that ridge and another 2,000 miles or whatever it was. But the point is that home, boys, home is just, can't you see people along the caravan route, the sponsors, and they do exist, the handlers, and they do exist, pushing these people and pushing these people and pushing these people, because they're on the other side of this lily field where you might fall asleep, but there, you see the big shining head on the hill? There. That's your rainbow. That's your gold. That's your land of milk and honey. And they get here, and they overwhelm the system. Very oftentimes, we have people telling us all the time, well, it's an invasion, and these people are coming here to cause crime and mayhem and, steal our youngins and all kinds of crazy stuff. But we often break down the caravan from the perspective of Americans. And frankly, we should. But I think if we start to look at it also through the eyes of what they think is happening, it certainly seems to further shore up the idea that Donald Trump is right and the wall needs to be built, because they need to have the message sent to them that there's only one way to enter into this country, and that is through diplomatic and/or bureaucratic channels. That's the only way they can be vetted as to whether or not they are going to provide or make a contribution to this nation. Whatever happened, that's not what your country can do for you. Now, 63% of them, housing, Medicaid, food, and cash welfare programs. If this group is allowed in, what is to keep all of Central America from draining itself? Sometimes people brandish the argument that, well, we got to keep out MS-13 or these other roving band of criminals that are cloaking themselves within the caravan. And I understand those arguments, and they're valid. But at the end of the day, we are up to our orifices in debt in this country, we cannot assume the debt of other nations. And if we were to adopt that policy, it makes more sense for us to work on them and with them there, over that ridge. Home, it's over there, than to bring them here and overwhelm a system that can't even take care of the poorest Americans that we have, our veterans, and up to 12% of our school-age children that by some estimates go to bed hungry every single night of the week. So where are our priorities? We're not doing our homeless any favors, and at the end of the day, we are not doing these people any favors either. But it sure as hell looks good on TV, doesn't it? Throughout the course of the day, we've had a few little technological glitches, so we're going to wrap this puppy up. Start on tomorrow's edition of Unknown America here on the Hart of America Talk Radio Network. So I appreciate you guys popping by today. We're going to go out on pretty much a cold exit as everything seems to kind of be malfunctioning. It's so funny. Some days the audio is the only thing that works, and you can't hear me. Other days the only thing that works is me, and you can't hear the audio. I don't know what that's all about, but that's what it is. So anyway, make plans for tomorrow's broadcast. We're going to be learning a lot of things you thought you knew about America. You've been listening to the Michael Hart Show right here on the Hart of America Talk Radio Network. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 8.